mic. Start recording. I hope I wasn't doing anything stupid on camera. I do like your sign from 112 to infinity. Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you later. All right. All right. This is CISS216, which is Intro to Web Development. You will notice we're in a different room than typically a lot of the CISS classes are. The reason for that is these classes are recorded and are posted to YouTube. And that's done for a number of reasons. First of all, I also teach this class as an online section. So the students in the online section then can view the lecture even though they're not here. Secondly, if anything happens where you miss a class or you're ill or with the winter, bad weather or whatever, and you're not able to make it to school, at least you can watch the video. All right? So that's what that is. Those little things in front of you are microphones. If you press one, the camera will focus on you, just like that. All right? You want to hit it again, whoever hit it? Whoever has the light on, I think that's you. Yeah, you're on camera.
I'm not.
Well, someone is.
Those guys are.
Okay. Someone, yeah, there we go. All right. Please do not play with the cameras. If you play with the cameras, I'll have to take those away from you, all right? No. If you ask a question, it's a good idea to press that button. The camera will go on you and the mic goes on you. If for whatever reason you don't feel like doing that, that's fine. Just remind me to repeat the question so that it's picked up on the microphone so the folks at home can hear it as well and all that. So at any rate, what we're going to do today is, let's see, 3 things essentially. One is just general class stuff. All right. Oh, let me pull that down. That's the other reason I like teaching here. It's just fun. It's like I'm Captain Picard behind this, all right? Pressing buttons and, all that. It's just a lot of fun to teach in this room. If I could, I would teach all my classes in this room. All right, we're going to go over just some general class stuff. I will point out some stuff to you that I would expect you to read on your own. I'm not going to read my syllabus. I'll just go and hit some of the highlights. But I'll point out some documents I want you to take a look at. We will start covering the very basics of web pages. And then we will talk about your first assignment. Now, when you leave today, you might not have enough information to complete your first assignment, but you can at least start on it. All right. So, we'll go from there. By the end of class on Thursday, right? You should have enough information to complete your first lab. All right. Let's get on with the general class information. Is there anyone here who is not familiar with Angel? Okay, so I'm assuming you all know the very basics of how to log on and all that sort of stuff. I'll also assume that you all know that if you're working on the labs here, you need to keep a copy of what you're working on because every time the machine reboots, it starts with a fresh image of the disk. So you need to have a thumb drive or email it to yourself or something. All right. Let me go into Angel and log on. the class that you should go into is CISS216 P100, even if you're in the online section. What I've done is I've merged the sections. That way there's only one to look at. And that's good because that provides you with a bigger community, right? If you have questions, items to post to the discussion board, there's going to be more eyes looking at it. So if you are on the online class, you're likely to see what I'm seeing here, 2 classes. So regardless of that, you pick the P100 one. This class should be disabled. All right, you should not be able to get into that class. I will probably, I'll keep it as disabled for the whole term. All right, we'll click on the correct link to go in. Most of the action happens on the Content tab. All right. Get Started, Read This First is mainly for online students. I'm going to tell you essentially the stuff that's contained there, so you can take a look at that if you want, but really nothing earth-shattering here. Course information, we'll go over some of these documents, the syllabus and communication methods, and so on. That's just general stuff about the course, largely what I'm going to go over today. Week 1, there'll be a folder for every week. And in that folder will appear a document that describes what to do this week, possibly an assignment. Some of our assignments go for 1 week, some of our assignments go for 2 weeks, or even longer, depending on the nature of the assignment. All right. And then a drop box for the assignment. So there'll be a folder for every week. On occasion, I combine a couple weeks into one folder as well. This is where the lectures are going to appear, by the way. They get posted to this week folder so that you can go in and look and, after today, some period after today, after a short period of time, the lecture will be available on YouTube that you can go and view it, and there'll be a link to it. Resources are just a bunch of different pages that I find beneficial, both in terms of some of the pages I use when I'm developing websites and I want to look something up, and in addition, sites that I found that are useful for my students. So we will refer to these a lot, all right? A lot of the times I may mention that, hey, there's a resource on Angel if you have these sorts of questions. In some cases, we'll actually look at them together, and we'll look at them in more detail. If you run into some resource, some web page about HTML that you consider to be really good, please feel free to post it to the discussion forum. And I may include it in the resources. This grows every semester, because every semester, I add a few to it. So, maybe we can find some to add to expand that list even further. There is a semester project folder that within a week or so, we're going to go over the semester project. So I'm not going to go over any of these documents now. I would hope that within the next week or so that you will have had an opportunity to read them on your own, and we'll discuss the project in class, in a future class. But I'm not going to sit and read those documents to you now. Just know that there is a semester project that consists of 2 phases, a design and then the completed product. One thing I emphasize in almost all of my classes is the need to design your work before you create it. And to design something means different in different classes, right? In the database class, you design your database. In this class, you did not design your website, and so on. Essentially, what that means is you plan it. You think about it. You decide what you want to do before you do it. That may sound silly. Of course you're going to do that. But I have a feeling a lot of people don't really think through the stuff before they do it. A lot of bad websites out there seem to indicate that people jump right in and try to create websites without really thinking about what it is that they want to accomplish and what's the best way to accomplish that. So we'll go over this within the next week or 2. For now, just be sure you read these documents. There's a discussion forum that you can post to. You can post to this pretty much anything that's appropriate for the class to say. Think of this like raising your hand and saying something in class that's relevant. So you can post a good resource that you found. You can post a link to an article about web development. You can post questions. Really, anything that's relevant to the course is fair game, and you can post to that. Again, consider this like raising your hand and asking a question in class. I do encourage you to check Angel between the classes. All right? It's one of the ways that I have to communicate with you. I'll post announcements. When I grade your stuff, I'll send you feedback through Angel. And again, it's a good idea to check at least a couple times between classes for those of you that are in the campus class. And for the online class, check several times a week, 3 or 4 times. Sometimes if someone asks me a question, for example, and I don't have the answer for it, I'll do some research and I'll post the answer, and then I'll post an announcement on Angel that describes the answer. All right. Okay, we're gonna spend some time looking at these documents in the course information folder. All right. And we're going to start from the bottom up. All right. Just because these will probably go quicker. The syllabus is probably the longest one. Copyright information for educational purposes is a document that I want you to read. I'm not going to bring it up. I'm not going to read it, but I want you to read it. In a nutshell, this class, obviously, we're going to be creating web pages, and you might have the opportunity, or you might have the desire to use images from some website on your website. For example, if you wanted to do a website about the Super Bowl, chances are you're not going to be able to fly down to the Super Bowl and take your own photos, so you'll be relying on using photos that you get somewhere online. All right? Is that legal? Are you violating copyright law? And the answer is if you did that for a commercial site, you'd absolutely be breaking copyright law. If you even did that for a personal website, you'd be breaking copyright law. However, because we're in an educational context and you're just developing the site as an exercise, within certain limits, you're permitted to use stuff from other websites, use images or whatever from other websites. Yes?
What about a nonprofit organization websites?
A nonprofit, again, they're still bound by copyright law. Absolutely. Copyright law, especially the way it is enforced these days, is pretty brutal. Pretty brutal.
As long
yes?
as it's not posted, then you're okay, right?
Yeah, essentially there's some restrictions, yeah. As long as there's only one copy of it, it's not distributed worldwide, it's that sort of thing. Yeah, it is okay. Now the big thing is don't do too much. You're still, even in an educational context, you can't take 20 images from a site. There's some restriction as far as that goes that's contained in the document. The other thing is give credit where credit's due. If you took a picture from ESPN.com for a page about the Super Bowl, put a note on the page, image taken from ESPN.com. It's generally all you need to do. But again, take the time and read through this document. The main thing I want to do is I want to respect copyright law. The web makes it real easy to violate copyright law. All right? And I just want to make sure that we respect it and are aware of it in this class. The next one is a document about content organization. It pretty much is what I'm explaining to you now, where everything is on the site. So we won't look at that. If you want to review again, you can look at it. Communication methods are a summary of ways that you can get a hold of me, especially if you need additional assistance or have questions. Again, as I mentioned, this class I'm teaching both online and in the classroom, and this note really is to both audiences. All right? I really think it makes for a better experience to treat this as just one giant class. Because again, like I mentioned, you have more people to collaborate with, ask questions to. All right, the people online can see the videos of the class, and you can as well. All right. It's important if you have questions that you get them resolved one way or another. All right. So here's some of the ways that you can communicate with me should you need to resolve some questions. First of all, for those of you that are in the online class, you're welcome to come and sit in on the campus-based class. All right. So if you want to, this class meets in BU 105 Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 to 10, right? 11 to 12 All right? And we go backwards in time. No, that's the physics class that does that. All right? 11 to noon in BU 105, you can come down and you can attend the lecture. So, you don't have to, certainly, but you can. Likewise, you can also watch the videos, which some people have found pretty helpful. It is interesting. I got on one evaluation, a student complained that I expect online students to watch the videos or come to class. No, I don't expect online students to do that. They're available, and I think it will benefit you to watch the videos. All right? I think it will benefit you if you're really stuck to come in. If you can't or don't wish to, well, that's fine, right, for the online students. That's fine. But, they're there. They're available for you to help. So you can do that. You can attend another of my classes' lab sessions. All right? This class is composed of a lecture and a lab. Our lab is immediately following the class. I have 3 other classes on campus this term, and they all have labs as well. You can drop into any of those classes' other labs, and I've invited students in my other classes to drop into this class's lab. I have a day and evening class on Monday through Thursday. So there's a day class on Monday, there's an evening class on Monday. There's a day class on Tuesday and Thursday, there's an evening class on Thursday. So if you need additional assistance, that's one thing that you might consider, is show up for one of my other classes' labs to get extra assistance. In addition to that, I have my office hours, which are Monday and Wednesday 10 to 1, Tuesday and Thursday 9 through 11, and other times by appointment. Let's see, there's a discussion board that you can ask questions. Think of that as raising your hand. There's email. Think of that as pulling me aside and talking to me individually. You can either send email through Angel or just through my regular LC email account. If necessary, I can arrange to talk to you by phone or through a chat room in Angel. There's even the phone. The phone is probably the least welcome way to get a hold of me, simply because, as one person joked, I have 5 different devices that tells me every time I get an email, whereas I only have one that tells me I got a phone call. All right, so it's easier to get a hold of me via email than phone call. Phone call, I only check my phone typically when I'm on campus, which is typically Monday through Thursday. Email, I check very frequently and will get back to you, whether it be through Angel email or regular LC email. I've put in here some expectation times. For an email or the discussion board, expect a response within a day or so. All right? Now, this is where the timing can be goofy. For example, if I check my email 10 a.m. on Saturday, all right, and I don't check it again until 10 p.m. on Sunday, there might be like 36 hours or so in there. Essentially, my goal is to answer any email within a day, all right? If you haven't received an answer within a period of time, you're absolutely welcome to send me a reminder and say, hey, I was wondering, do you have an answer for me yet, or something along those lines. Again, it's not a problem. I don't mind getting reminders like this. And occasionally, again, not being perfect, occasionally things slip through the cracks. And it is possible that, if you've gone 2 or 3 days and you haven't gotten a response yet, it's a pretty safe bet that maybe the email slipped through the cracks. Feel free to send me a reminder. All right, lastly, the syllabus. And we will look at this document. We're not going to go over it word by word, all right, but again, we'll at least preview it. The top really talks about different ways of getting a hold of me, all right. email address, phone number, office hours. Here's the description of the class and the outcomes. And you should read these because these are the things I expect you to be able to do. And really anything we do in class should relate to one of these outcomes. And if it's not clear how it relates to one of those outcomes, let me know, and I'll try to make it clear. We have 2 texts for this book. I think both of them are excellent textbooks in their own right. The bigger book, if I can borrow someone's to show them. And do you have the other one as well? Yeah, thank you. This book, Head First HTML, actually I can do this, is a book that we'll probably spend most of our time in. It is our HTML textbook, and students really generally like this book. I've gotten really good feedback about it, and I like the series of books as well. So I try to use these whenever I can. This book is a book that we use to get an idea of how we're going to design and how we're going to go through the process of planning our project. That's really the purpose of this one. So this book is real light reading, in my opinion. You could read it in a sitting or two, depending on how fast you read. We'll spend a couple weeks going over that, and sort of the framework that they describe in this book is a framework we're going to use in planning our project. So both of these, I think, are excellent books. In the syllabus, when we get to the schedule at the bottom, the bigger the books I refer to as the HTML book. The smaller the books I refer to as the Elements book. Even though there's 2 books, again, if you haven't picked up your books yet, those 2 books together are likely to be cheaper than many other textbooks you'll buy, simply because these are industry books. These are not books that are published for textbooks, and therefore they're typically less expensive. Instructor approach. It's important to realize that this is your class. All right. What I'm doing up here, what I'm doing up here, isn't for my health, isn't to please me or for me to amuse myself. It's to help you understand it. So everything in the class is geared to you understanding the material. Me and I think most instructors are willing to meet anyone halfway, answering questions, explaining something over again, pointing out a website that explains it, whatever, all right? But you have a responsibility in this as well, and that responsibility is to ask me questions when there's something that you run into that's difficult. Now, one thing that I've heard students say a couple of things, and I sort of want to counter that. I've heard students say, well, I don't understand it, but, I'll keep working on it and see if it's okay, and I'll be able to get through it. Well, maybe not. All right. If you spend a reasonable amount of time trying something and you still don't understand it, oftentimes, you'll just be spinning your wheels if you try over and over and over again. The thought is of, it's good to work and it's good to try to figure out problems on your own. But the fact is as students, there's going to be time where you need assistance. So therefore, make a sincere effort to do something. But if you're still having difficulty, that's the time to ask me. Now, if it's something that I expect you to know the answer to, I may not come right out and give you the answer, but I may try to nudge you in the right direction so that you can discover the answer yourself. So it might be something small, it might be something, in coding. I've worked as a programmer for a number of years. Sometimes you just need a second set of eyes to look at your code and find out what's wrong with it. So I'll do my best to provide that to you. The other thing I've heard from students is I'm so lost I don't even know where to begin asking questions. All right? If that's the case, then say that sentence. If you don't want to say it in class, pull me aside and say, look, I don't even know where to ask. I don't even know where to begin. And we'll go and we'll talk through it and we'll figure out what we need to do next. Here's some general college policies. My policy on late assignments, please take the time to read. I try to be fairly flexible about late assignments, especially if I'm working with students and they're asking me questions and so on. I also ask students in some cases to rework an assignment if it's not 100% correct. I don't think, how do I want to say this? If you do something and it's not exactly correct, I don't think it benefits you as much if I simply point it out to you than if I point it out to you and ask you to correct it and ask you to figure out what you did wrong and to correct it. So therefore, I ask you to rework a lot of assignments. All right. So I can be very flexible as far as giving you a break if an assignment's in late, if I know you're making a sincere effort and if you're asking me questions and so on. Where I become less generous is for students that simply drop off the radar and 6 weeks from now turn in the first lab or something like that. Those students, I haven't been working with. I don't know what the issue is. I assume they just didn't feel like turning the assignment in. All right? So I reserve the right to deduct points, but if you're running into difficulty getting an assignment completed on time, talk to me about it and we'll try to figure something out. Now the one thing I will say is if you have the flu, let's say, and you miss or are late on one assignment, that's no big deal. But if you continually have a hard time getting the assignments in on time, take that as a warning sign that you need to step it up a little bit. You need to talk to me and you need to figure out what to do. One assignment being late, hey, everyone has those weeks, where they're just not feeling up to par, they're not getting stuff done. But again, if that happens assignment after assignment, that's a sign that we need to figure out what you're having difficulty with and move you in the right direction. Your grade is comprised of 60 points for homework and a total of 40% for your project. 20% of that is the design of the project, 20% is the completion of the project. This indicates how high I value designing your work. Right? That's a significant amount of your total grade is the design. I think some students look at that and say, that's not very important, and slough it off. Well, your grade's really going to take a hit if you do that. Grading scale pretty standard, 90 through 100, and so on. Here's the schedule as far as reading goes of what readings are due each week. So that'll give you an idea. In general, it's good to have read prior to coming to class. Does anyone have any questions about this stuff before we get into our last couple of topics, talking about the basics of creating a web page and talking about your first lab? Okay. What kind of things appear on web pages? Someone tell me some of the things that appear on web pages. Yes. Images, pictures. Menus. And what is a menu?
Links to...
Series of links to other pages, right. So we have images, we have links, forms that allow you to enter data in. For example, to get into Angel, you have to type in your username and password. All right. Repeat that, please. Flash files or animations. There can be, or other forms of multimedia, video, audio, and so on.
Description of whatever product or
yeah, just plain old text, just words that explain something. All right. You can actually look at the code of any web page. Let's look at the code of this Angel web page. All right. How do you view it? If you go to Page and View Source, you'll see a mess of code. This is the web page. So, these little things over here are images. Let's see if we can find one of them. I think it found it. One. There we go. That represents an image on the web page. All right. We have a very simple text document. Does everyone know what I mean when I say a plain text document? All right. A document that can be created or viewed in Notepad. What's different between a text document and a Word document, for example?
Word documents have like stylization.
Yeah. Word documents have special characters that do formatting. All right. Whereas the text is just the letters that you type in. All right. If I type in hello into a text document, HELLO, it's going to be 5 characters. If I type in hello in a Word document and save it, it might be several thousand characters long because of all the formatting and all the other information it stores. So a text file is just a plain file with nothing but the characters that you type into it. And that's what we're going to do, and that's how you create web pages. So let's look again at this web page. All these things mean different things. This, for example, is a link. This, for example, is an image. When the web browser goes and pulls up a web page, if I type in a URL or address of a web page and go to it, that web server on the other end sends back to me a plain text file. How does the browser know in that plain text file and this giant mess of stuff, how does the browser know what's a link, what's an image, what's text? How does the browser know that? Through the use of tags. All right, very good. What are tags? Does someone want to describe what a tag is? Yes.
It's like certain, for a link it would be an A tag.
Okay.
Between less than and a greater.
Okay. And what does a tag do? Tags describe something about the text in that file. It may say, hey, this text is actually an image. This text is actually a link. This text is actually a heading. All right? It's similar to those of you that sometimes I see some people highlight their textbooks, right? If you're in a class and I say something, the teacher says something like, the diagram on page 105 is important, it's going to be covered on the final exam. What do those students do? Those students go into that page on their book and maybe they highlight it. Maybe they put a star next to it. All right? What they're doing is they're marking up their book. They're literally, with a highlighter or with a pen, they're marking up their book. They're giving additional information to what's in the book to give some extra meaning to that text. In other words, that's not just a chart, that's an important chart. If, on the other hand, I say, the stuff on page 110, that's outdated. You really don't need to look at that. You might go to that page and put a big giant red X through it and say, hey, don't worry about this, so I know not to study it. Again, you're literally marking up the page to say what that text means. So, again, if I have a book here, and I really thought that this was important, I may draw a square around it or highlight it in yellow or whatever. If this wasn't important, I might put a big X through it. All right? So HTML is sort of how we do that for our text files to create our web pages. The letters HTML stand for Hypertext markup language. And let's look at these two phrases to understand what they mean. What do you suppose the phrase hypertext means? What's the word hyper mean? Okay, if I say hyperactive, all right, what does that mean? That means that someone is more active than normal, right? If I am Captain Picard and I order to go into hyperspace, what does that mean? That means that somehow it's beyond regular space, all right? So the word hyper sort of means above and beyond, all right? If we say someone is hyperactive, again, it means that they're more active than an average person would be, all right? Someone's hypersensitive is more sensitive than the average person would be. So hypertext is sort of text that's above and beyond ordinary text. How is it above and beyond ordinary text? By the very reasons that we specified before, right? Because it's not just text, it might be links too. In other words, I might have a word on a web page that if you click on it, you get more explanation of that word. That's more than average text can do, right? I'm reading my plain old book here. And I want to look up this word. I can click on that word all I want to, all right? Nothing's going to happen. Why? Because this is just plain old text. It's just the words. If this were a hypertext document, it might be set up so that if I click on that word, I go to a web page that explains that term or talks about that term in more detail. All right? So, how are we able to make this text better than regular text or more than regular text? We do it by marking up, by using a language that allows us to mark up, and that's through the use of tags. Thank you. I will do that. Let's see, that's the first time I did it in this class. I will do that. Let's see, we have 15 weeks, 2 classes. So that's 30 classes. I will do that 50 times a semester. If someone wants to keep a total, I'd be really curious to see, because I do that at least once, maybe twice some classes, depending on how alert I am that day. I'm actually doing pretty good today, because it took 40 minutes into it for me to make that mistake. So I'm in pretty good shape. All right. It's done through the use of tags. Now, what is a tag? Well, we had a description of it before. A tag looks something like this. Tags come in pairs. Starting tags and ending tags. Both starting tags and ending tags are included in this less than and greater than sign, and then the name of the tag is in between it. What's the difference between the starting tag and the ending tag? The difference is the ending tag has a slash before the name of the tag. So this is an H1 tag with the word hello in it. Now the H1 tag is a tag for a heading. It's similar, if you've done Microsoft Word, to like the heading 1 style. What this is saying is this is one of the most important topics on the page. All right, this is a top level topic on this page. The H2 tag is a second level tag. Think of it as like appearing on the second level of an outline. Let's say I was doing a web page about myself. All right? If I were going to do an outline for it, if I was writing a paper by myself, I might make an outline like this. about me, biography, employment, hobbies, and maybe under employment I would have software developer and teacher. So I'd have levels to my outline, right? If you were doing a paper in an English class like this. The top level is what the whole thing's about. It's about me. I then have a biography that's sort of underneath that. I have an employment that's underneath that. And underneath employment, I have two subcategories. All right? My employment as a software developer, my employment as a teacher. And then I have a second level category of my hobbies. Now, if we were going to do a web page to do this, all right, this would be in an H1 tag because it's a top-level header. This would be in an H2 tag. This would be in an H2 tag. What do you suppose these two would be in? H3, because it's a third-level heading. And then finally, this would be another H2 tag. You have up to 6 levels of headings. All right, so there's H1 through H6. And again, don't think of it like H1 as being the first, H2 being the second, H3 being the third. H1 means it's on the top level. All right, H2 means it's on the second level. So I can have a bunch of H2s, or I could have a bunch of H3s. It doesn't relate to like the position, it relates sort of to the level that topic is. So let's go and let's create a web page that does this. And I'll go in and I'll just put some dummy text in there. I won't fill out and tell you my life story. All right, you'll have to buy the book for that one. All right, but let's go in and let's create a simple web page. Now, for this class, we're going to use just plain old Notepad, a plain old text editor for creating web pages. In the lab, there is something called Notepad Plus or Plus or something like that you can also use. It's about the same, and some people find that a little better, so it doesn't really matter to me. But we're going to do a plain text editor because we want to write all the code by hand. There are some products like Dreamweaver or other products that allow you simply to sort of like draw your web page by dragging stuff around the screen. That's no fun at all. All right? We want to do it ourselves, right? Think about it. Would, you go to a top-level restaurant. Is the cook going to go and take a TV dinner and microwave it for you? I sure hope not. The cook is going to make the stuff from scratch. All right? Same idea here. We want to become good at writing web pages, so we're going to write it by scratch. We're not going to use a tool to write it for us. So I'm going to go into Notepad, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to essentially put in the code that I wrote on the sheet of paper. Now, this isn't going to be a complete web page. This will be sort of a fragment of a web page, but it will be useful in introducing the notion of tags. So I'll put my top-level header saying about me. Oops. I will then go and say H2, what did I say, biography. Employment. So I've written out the code to implement that outline. All right, about me, biography, and I've put those tags in there. So now a web browser, when it looks at this, it knows, hey, that's a top-level heading, that's a second-level heading, that's a third-level heading. So we have to save it as a web page for it to work. Now this is something that's a little tricky, so I'll go over it once, and if you have questions about it as you practice that, we can review that in lab. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say File, Save, and I'm going to change this from saying text document, and I'm going to pick all files. And then I'm going to give it a name that ends in .html. All right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to save this as firstday.html. And I'll click Save. When I do that, notice the icon is the icon for a web page, little Firefox logo. And I can see firstday.html. One thing that's important is to turn your file extensions on. Now this is another thing that when we get in the lab you might have some questions about. But what you can do is, depending on what version of Windows that you have, you want to go and turn off this feature that says hide extensions for known file types. They do that for novices because that would confuse novices to see those extra characters, but as people developing web pages, we need to know the exact file name. A file name really consists of two parts. The name of the file and the extension. So a Word document, for example, will be something like, letter.docx. That indicates that it's a Word 2010 file. All right. For a web page, it's something.html. Well, we need to see that to make sure that it's correct, so that's why I would suggest turning extensions off. All right. So now it's a web page. We can double-click on it and open it in a web browser. And here's our web page. And notice what happened. Someone described to me how this looks.
It looks like a Word document.
Okay. Yeah, it's all to the one side. What's the biggest thing on the page? The About Me. Why is that? Because it's an H1. It's a top-level heading. It makes sense that the top-level heading be bigger than the headings underneath it, right? All of these are the same size because they're all H2s. They're smaller than this, but they're bigger than the H3s. So the browser knows that this is the level of heading because we tag that code. We put tags on that code to say, hey, that's what that's what this code means. One other tag that we'll cover real quick is the paragraph tag. And I can put the paragraph tag here and say something like this. And I'll close the paragraph tag, and I can save it, and then refresh the browser, and then that paragraph just appears just as plain text. Yes? Yes, we absolutely can. We're not. We actually are going to do that through another language called cascading style sheets. So yeah, we will do that. We'll discuss that either next class or the class following this one. All right. Now, what about your first lab? Unfortunately, this is all I can talk about HTML today, and this isn't enough to do the first lab, but you can get started on it. What is the first lab? The first lab, what I want you to do is go out on the web and find some web pages about some topics. These are really the four of the main topics in this class. HTML, CSS, website design, and accessibility. I want you to find a total of 4 sites about each of those topics. So that would be a total of 16 websites. All right. I talk about a resource versus a reference. I'm not going to split hairs there. Just find 4 web pages about these topics. Then you'll read through those that you found, and you'll summarize what they say, and you'll talk a little bit about what it is, what it means, and so on and so forth. All right. And then you'll create a web page that contains those. And it will contain links to those sites. So, you can't, based on what we've done today, create the links yet. If you want to, you can read ahead in the book, or I can give you a hand in lab to do that. But you can at least look for those sites, all right, read them, and come up with the headings and paragraphs that you might have in your site. Start thinking about, like, how many H1s am I going to have? How many H2s am I going to have? And so on. All right? So that's your first lab assignment. And again, next time, we'll sort of complete the loop by finishing out this web page and showing how we can add links to it. All right? So after next class, you'll be able to complete the assignment. But again, you can at least start on it today. Are there any questions? All right, great. We'll see you over in lab then.